Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host, Raider. And in this video, before we get started, I'd like to take some time to thank all of you that are liking and subscribing the channel. We are growing exponentially. At the time of this taping, we are just short of 6,000 subscribers, and that is awesome, and I'd like to thank you for that. Now, if you're not subscribed or liking the videos and you do find the content valuable, then I ask that you do so. If you want to, you can subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. And you can also like the videos if you like them. Or you can be like the one person that dislikes my videos, which one person disliking my videos, I think I'm doing pretty good. That is not a challenge for more of you to do so, but, definitely appreciate it if you did like and subscribe. Now, all the members, the VSRs and the Raiders, I'd like to say a special thank you because you guys are supporting the channel and you don't have to do that. And I appreciate it. Now, this video, the reason why I'm doing this video is because I wanted to show you the absolute psychosis involved in calculating the effective date. Now, and we're going to be talking about the effective date for increases. Now, typically VBMS itself will calculate the increase based upon the choices that the rater makes. But I just want to show you that if I wanted to try to hand calculate this out, the rater still has to be cognizant of all of the things in play to double check that the VBMS system did the right thing. So we're going death by PowerPoint, kids. So this is my handy dandy diagram. And I want to go through this with you to show you that there's technically four different factors that can contribute to when the increase exam's effective date could be. So I'm going to go through each one of these individually. And the first two here, you have the veteran filed only a claim. There's no intent to file. There's no earlier evidence of anything. We only have the claim. So the date of claim, when the VA received your claim. So in this example, it's going to be January 1st of 2025. The veteran submits the claim goes through, the veteran has an examination, and let's say that there's an increase to your claim. You go from 0% to 10% for your asthma, let's say. So what'll happen is the rating will assign the only effective date it can, which will be the date of claim. This is default here. So there's no smoke and mirrors on this one. Now, let's go down here to a different fact pattern. You file a claim and an ITF. There's no other evidence other than the fact that you filed your original claim or your initial claim on 1/1/2025. That's the date of claim. You submit it through, it goes through, you get an increase from 0% to 10% for asthma. Well, fortunately for you, what's going to happen is the intent to file overrides the date of claim. So you get the more advantageous intent to file of 6/1/2024. Now, technically, as long as you file within a year from your intent to file, you can go back up to a year for this. It's going to honestly depend on when you filed your claim as to how far back it can go, but legally it can go back up to 1 year prior to the date of claim, to maximize your benefits. But you can see these little purplish arrows. They're going to tell you which one we're going to go with. We would not go with the date of claim on this. We would go with the earlier 6/1/2024 of the intent to file. Now, this third example is going to be a little bit different. So this is where increase claims. Now, this is exclusive to increase claims. Let me grab my banner real quick. Very important. This is only for increased claims. I cannot say this enough. And maybe some secondaries, but 38 CFR 3.400 provides for if there's evidence up to a year prior to the date of claim or intent to file, if there's evidence to show that there is some kind of medical evidence showing that the condition got worse, we can use that. Now, you'll notice that this fact pattern stays the same 1/1/2025 is the date of claim. And I can go technically back to a year prior. I'm showing that there is some kind of, like, let's say you got hospitalized for um, your respiratory condition, your asthma. Well, in this fact pattern, the hospitalization happened over 1 year prior. So we couldn't use that one. That's why this arrow is sitting here on your date of claim would be January 1st of 2025 because your hospitalization happened over a year prior. Now, if the fact pattern changed, and let's say that we have, you went and got hospitalized for an asthma attack. And after that, you got hospitalized for an asthma attack on 7/1 of 2024, let's say. We'll change in the fact pattern a little bit. If that's true, and subsequently, after that hospitalization, you were given daily medications, daily oral medications for your asthma, then that would be 30%. Now, normally your 30% rating would go back to here, but because we can trace the actual change from 0% to 30% back to this hospitalization, I can use this hospitalization to give you the earlier effective date of the hospitalization that is within 1 year prior to, in this case, the date of claim. So this is something that every veteran has to consider. Now, there's a lot of caveats to this. The medical evidence has to be relevant to a increase for VA purposes. So you can't just have not everything counts towards this criteria for 38 CFR 3.400. It has to be something that contributes to the worsening for VA purposes. So if it's a musculoskeletal issue, if you are service connected for your lumbar spine and you have, like, let's say a lumbar spine fusion, that's a surgery, right? That's a date, in which you can have some kind of change or, whatnot. So keep in mind that the evidence can be used. Now, the rater's not going to instantly grab onto this. You have to make them aware of this because VBMS will not grab onto this like it will grab onto the intent to file because the intent to file is built in. The VBMS system builds that. Now, for increases in VBMSR, there's a little section that says, hey, look, was there any kind of evidence that was used that shows worsening? If so, put that date in here. You need to make them specifically aware of this, or else they will not consider it. They'll just use your date of claim. And they're not paying attention to it a lot of the time. Unless they're a savvy rater, they will not pay attention to evidence that shows it worsening because it's just basically top sheeting. They're just going through it. They're not really paying attention because a lot of the new raters are just looking to see what the examiner said and they just go with it. But what they should be doing is they should be going, okay, I understand that the veteran's now on a daily inhaler, but when did that first start? Why did that first start? And is it within a year, up to a year prior to either the date of claim or ITF? So this one right here is the most, this one is something that us as veterans need to be familiarizing ourselves with, that you can get a year prior to your date of claim or intent to file based upon evidence of it worsening. Now, let's go over here to the fourth fact pattern. So in this example, you have a claim, date of claim, you have an intent to file, and you have a fact pattern of the condition got worse. So in this situation, everything is the same-ish. So we have January 1st of 2025 is when you submitted your claim. The claim goes through the claims process and it gets rated. the rater will look back and the system will flag that 6/1 of 2024 there was an intent to file. Now, if the rater's being lazy or if they're not really paying attention, they'll go with this date. But technically, let's say that you had that hospitalization for the asthma on 7/1 of 2023. If they applied the increase claim provision of 38 CFR 3.400 for evidence showing a worsening of the condition, then the effective date should be superseded by this hospitalization, which showed the subsequent, that's what caused you. That hospitalization is what shows that you got worse and you now require the 30% inhaler from that day on. Well, then the rater should actually use this particular date, this evidence date, as your date of claim because it's within 1 year of the intent to file, up to 1 year prior to the date of claim or intent to file. So normally you would file this increase claim on this date and either probably expect to get 6/1 of 2024 as your effective date, when in fact, an informed veteran would get 7/1 of 2023 based upon the fact pattern, based upon the evidence at which they have. Now, how would you go about reporting this? You would go about reporting this basically saying, hey, look, I, less than 1 year from my intent to file, I had evidence showing a worsening of my condition at Salisbury VA Medical Center. I was hospitalized for my asthma, and subsequently, because from that particular incident, I'm now on daily medications. So you would explain it to the rater, or at least to the DRO for a higher level review to show that you had, this fact pattern. And this is something that can help veterans out in identifying, and the earliest effective date that could be applied. Mental health conditions, hospitalizations matter. Respiratory conditions, hospitalizations can matter. It can show a worsening. My dogs are going to start barking because the neighbor dog's barking. But anyway, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this is something that I wanted to just kind of point out to you guys about how increased claims effective dates can be calculated based upon the fact patterns that we have going on. And the one that's missed out the most is this 38 CFR Part 4 evidence, the earlier evidence review. It's something that everybody should be looking at. Now, I did leave IU out of this because IU is considered an increased claim, but it has its own special requirements, so I didn't include it. And there are some caveats on this based upon the date the entitlement arose. So, and every time I say the date the entitlement arose, it means that, when the evidence showed the condition happened. If you have an intent to file, so like let's say you have an intent to file, but you have a knee condition and you have a knee surgery. If that knee surgery happens, like let's say after this time period, I'm back after coughing my brains out. So there's a fifth category here, which says, and I'm just going to use this right here. Let's say you have a hip surgery and your hip surgery happens after your date of claim. Well, you are not going to be paid all the way back to your date of claim if the increase itself is based upon a surgery. Sorry, I have just the worst coughing fit known to man. So anytime that there's going to be like a surgery, that, like something to where the facts of the case, the evidence is not true until this date, we can't pay you back to the original claim for that because it's the date the entitlement arose. So just keep that in mind. That's something that has to be kind of true because this right here for the, like, let's say you have treatment that goes back up to a year. that's the date the entitlement arose. Well, the same can be true for like surgeries and whatnot, that they can limit you to the date of the actual surgery. Because the fact is, if you had a total knee replacement, the minimum, is 30% for the knee replacement. That's not going to go back in time before you had the knee replacement. So just keep that in mind too. But for the most part, this is the general rule. The date the entitlement arose is something that you have to consider, and it will be situational based upon your condition. But it is something that I wanted to kind of talk about, just so that way all bases are kind of covered on here. And I'm sorry, I'm just having the worst coughing fit, and I've tried to record this like 5 times. So we're gonna go with this, bloopers included. So that's about all I got for you guys today. Once again, I said it in the beginning, but I'll say it again. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing. I appreciate it. But this is just the first kind of tentative discussion to whet your appetite about effective dates and what they kind of look like and how they would be, generally provided. And like I said, the date the entitlement arose is going to be one of those things that throws a monkey wrench into everything. So there's always going to be a caveat, guys. But anyway, that's about all I got for you today. Raider out.